On September the 22nd, 2003, multimillionaire Robert Durst was on trial in Galveston, Texas for the murder of Morris Black. That trial was the beginning of one of the biggest legal stories in America.
All eyes were on this case.
This was an international story because the defendant owned more than anybody probably owned in all of New York City.
This case was not going to be a whodunit. It was going to be a why-done-it.
This is what Mr. Durst did, Morris Black.
How in the hell do we get this jury to look at what happened versus all the he did afterwards that makes him look like a very dangerous, calculated killer?
This was not a case that I was involved in. The lawyers that were involved are all friends of mine. But even as much as I thought I knew, I had no idea what was really going on in Galveston County.
None of it makes sense. Absolutely none of it.
It would be nice to believe that when you have the evidence, when it's credible and compelling, you're going to get the right verdict. But when you have a defendant with unlimited resources and money, unfortunately, that's not the way it always happens. It's important to find out truly what happened behind the scenes in Galveston County, truly what happened with that jury, with that verdict, with those lawyers. That's a story nobody has ever heard before.
They broadcast it as a torso floating in the bay. And the body would have been down in here. And I actually pointed out to the bay and I said, look at those dark spots just under the surface of the water. Out beyond the pier, you can see the dark shadows of the bags out there. And then we fished in 3 bags that were floating under the water. That was 2 arms and a leg. And then the missing leg was found farther west of the crime scene, washed up on the beach. There was no head, kind of seared into your memory, if you will. It's hard to forget.
I finished all the chores for the day. I sit down, turn on the TV to watch Sunday Night Football, and within 2 or 3 seconds, the phone rings. I answer the phone, and dispatch says, "This is Galveston Dispatch. We have a torso floating in the bay." And I said, "I'm sorry, I didn't hear you right. What did you say?" I got in the car, and I respond to the scene.
I think one of the things people don't know is sometimes prosecutors are on call, kind of like a doctor's on call. In special crimes at Harris County, we were on call 24 hours a day with a beeper or with the cell phone.
You don't want to make any assumptions at that point. You let the evidence tell you where to go next. We have the torso, 2 legs, 2 arms, and 3 empty bags. I see the trash in the bags. There was a cover for a bow saw. One thing that really stood out that I remember, there was a newspaper flyer that said resident and had an address on Avenue K. The immediate thought was that that address may very well have something to do with this crime.
Using fingerprints, the medical examiner is able to confirm the identity of that headless body as being 71-year-old Morris Black. Why would anybody want Morris Black dead, and why would anybody need to mutilate his body in such a horrible way? While Morris Black's family is notified about his death, the Galveston Police Department arrives at that address on Avenue K.
The trash was out at the curb, and inside the trash can there was a .22 pistol and an empty shell casing. We're very much thinking we had a murder weapon at that point.
The police department also recovered an eyeglass prescription in the trash, and the name of the prescription belonged to Robert Durst. At this time, nobody knew who Robert Durst was.
We also found an eviction notice for Morris Black for apartment number 1. Inside Morris Black's apartment, there was blood in the drain, the sink, the shower, certainly evidence that would indicate that blood was being washed down the drain. And they found evidence of blood in the hallway going from Morris Black's apartment to the apartment across the hall. The landlord told us that Dorothy Signer was the person who rented the apartment across the hall from Morris Black.
Dorothy Signer is not at the apartment, so the police department gets a search warrant for that second apartment, and when they go inside, they find blood spatter on the walls.
There were drop cloths and cuts of linoleum consistent with dismemberment of the body. Morris Black was kind of a loner. He had a good heart, but he could be difficult.
Morris Black would wear like a little knit cap all the time, and he walked around like a sailor man, and he was a merchant marine. The way he lived was off the grid. He kept to himself.
Usually you can get a better feel for your victim, but Morris Black just kind of stayed this shadowy character that not a lot was ever known about.
The autopsy showed that there was an injury to the head while he was alive because there was blood in the lungs. Only way you can get that is flowing blood coming down the esophagus, down into the lungs, and the person is breathing at the time. We know he wasn't shot in the torso, the arms, or the legs. We know there was a gunshot because of the high-velocity spatter. Likely conclusion, Morris Black was shot in the head. So this person who rented the apartment under the name Dorothy Signer was somebody we wanted to talk to. And through the internet, we were able to locate Dorothy Signer and actually called her up and talked to her. She had no connection to Galveston. She had no connection to Morris Black. We asked her about Robert Durst. She went to high school with Robert Durst.
We do not believe in coincidences in the criminal justice system. And the fact that Robert Durst went to high school with Dorothy Signer, I call it circumstantial evidence.
During the investigation, we came across information that Robert Durst may have dressed as a woman from time to time.
Librarians said that they did see Robert Durst and Morris Black together at the library, and that Robert Durst would come in dressed in drag.
And so we figured that Robert Durst is Dorothy Signer. Officers pulled over the vehicle, which was driven by Robert Durst. And inside the car, they found a bow saw and traces of blood in the back portion of the SUV. Officer Cody and I were upstairs of Galveston Police Department where Robert Durst was, and he asked what his bond was. And Cody told him it was $250,000, and then asked him, "Do you have that kind of money?" And his response was, "Not on me." He's booked, and then he made bond, I believe, the next day. At that time, I got a call from a New York Times reporter asking me to look at an old photo and see if it's the same Robert Durst. From there, all hell broke loose.
We find out Robert Durst was actually a real estate heir from New York City. His family owns Times Square. So what in the world is Robert Durst doing dressed as a woman in Galveston, Texas in some crappy apartment?
Galveston is a port city, so we have people from all over the world coming through our ports.
And it seems to be the perfect place to get away, disappear, and hide if you're looking to do that.
One of the reporters told me that he was a suspect in the disappearance of his wife from a long time ago, and that case had never been solved.
He's also a suspect in LA in his best friend Susan Berman's murder only a year earlier. Maybe he was hiding in Galveston because these charges were heating up.
When the time comes for Durst to show up for the initial hearings in the Morris Black case, he is nowhere to be found.
He was on the lam, and turns out he's got resources to be on the lam forever if he wants.
If he's that wealthy, just pay the cash to bond out like that. There's no telling where he is now. He's gone.
Someone killed someone and cut their body up? That seems crazy.
Robert Durst hired the dream team of Texas.
Justice isn't black or white, it's green. And he had the green.
The police department has arrested Robert Durst for the murder of Morris Black. But with seemingly unlimited financial resources, Robert Durst skips town and now he's on the run.
Robert, please come home. The trust has the wherewithal to pay for your legal defense.
45 days goes on. They're searching for Robert Durst. He's finally found 1,500 miles away from Galveston, Texas, in Pennsylvania, where he's arrested, shoplifting a sandwich.
He rented a car, and he's using Morris Black's ID, and he's using Morris Black's name.
While all this is going on, you also have a prosecutor in Westchester County, New York, looking into a murder allegation against Robert Durst there, and another one in LA County, California, where they're looking at the possibility of Robert Durst also committing a murder there.
Because there was a lot of evidence. The Morris Black case looks open and shut. It doesn't look good for Robert Durst. And then this guy who just got arrested shoplifting a sandwich has hired literally the dream team of Texas. Dick DeGuerin, Mike Ramsey, and Chip Lewis. You don't get better. We all knew at that point it's going to be a fight.
When Robert Durst hired Dick DeGuerin, everybody knew who he was. He was the biggest guy to hire in Texas. He was the best. And I knew that personally because I tried the Dror Goldberg case against him, and I got to see firsthand, up front and personal, how great he was at his job. I also got to see things that I thought he made mistakes doing, where I felt like maybe I could share those thoughts with Joel and Kurt as they prepared for their trial. And I did that. And I knew Chip better than both of those guys because he's a friend of mine. And Chip worked at the DA's office when I was at the DA's office. He was an up-and-coming star prosecutor who was great in trial, who is very, very charming. He left the office to go out and make his own name in the criminal defense world. So I knew that Joel and Kurt were going to have their work cut out for them.
I had enjoyed a lot of success and created a very favorable reputation. That very fortunate set of circumstances put me in a position to be hired on the Durst case. Here I am, just over 30, going to be trying the most high-profile case in the country, if not the world.
I remember walking over to the main courthouse, and as soon as we turned the corner, there was 50, 100 cameras. It was bizarre.
All eyes were on this case.
This was an international story because the defendant was the son of a billionaire with a B, somebody who owned more than anybody probably owned in all of New York City.
This case was not going to be a whodunit. It was going to be a whydunit, because with the amount of forensics that you have cutting a body up, they're going to be able to tie back something with the DNA to Durst. That's unavoidable.
We filed a pleading with the court that said you do not need to do DNA. There will be no contest as to the identity of the shooter. And Mr. Durst swears to affirm that he killed Morris Black. It was self-defense resulting in an accidental discharge of a gun. It was not a murder.
Everybody was shocked that that was going to be a defense. Well, of course, there was always a question in everyone's mind whether he was insane. You have someone who is trying to hide his identity, dressing as a woman, killed someone and cut their body up? That seems crazy.
How does self-defense end up with body parts in a trash bag thrown in the bay? Doesn't quite make sense.
When you read the legal paragraph of what justifies self-defense, there's a lot of words. And it's hard to make a jury understand all those words and all those little elements and pieces matter before self-defense applies. Before you're allowed to use deadly force self-defense, you have to believe the threat is imminent, like about to happen, and you have to use reasonable force necessary to defend yourself. Self-defense cases are harder to prosecute than you think.
We knew the atrocious, horrific facts and what they were. The question was, how in the hell do we get this jury to look at what happened versus all the he did afterwards that makes him look not only guilty, but like a very dangerous, calculated killer. But we had all the money in the world to do all the work we wanted to do to get there. I think if we can keep this on track, we're going to win this case.
Robert Durst is charged with the murder of his neighbor, Morris Black. As the prosecution prepares to go to trial, they come to court with what you would assume to be a plethora of evidence. And for his part, Robert Durst has hired the best defense lawyers that money can buy.
We had everything at our disposal. We had an unlimited budget. We had the ability to do things that 99% of the time a criminal defense lawyer doesn't have to do. Deep, involved, expensive polling of thousands of people to put together a most compelling motion to change a venue was the first in that step. We could show the folks that met the criteria for jury selection in Galveston County were overwhelmingly predisposed to believe Bob Durst was guilty based on what had been reported to date.
We didn't have that kind of money. We did not have any polls, but we're getting affidavits from citizens, and we're showing that, yes, he could get a fair trial.
Change of venue, if a judge grants that, it's going to cost the county a lot of money because you have to pay to put up not just 12 jurors plus 2 alternates in another county, but all the security, the bailiff, however many deputies need to come to be in charge of the jury and the defendant, the court staff, the judge, the prosecution team, the defense team. The county's got to pay for all that times every single night you're in trial, and they don't come home on the weekends. I think that when you add up all those expenses, you're easily talking about, with a trial that lasted as long as this one did, close to $1 million. So that's a huge bill, and they don't have the money for that.
The judge has a lot of discretion on a change of venue. However, the polling was so thorough, the support for the motion was overwhelming, that a court of appeals, if she denied change of venue, would likely make them try the whole case again. The goal in mind was to posture the case to a point that the state would agree to trade our change of venue motion for individual voir dire.
The defense's position was, if you give us individual jury selection, if you permit us to examine jurors one by one, then we don't have to take the show on the road. Mike Ramsey and Dick DeGuerin could literally drill down on individual juror about whether they could find that someone could kill his neighbor, decapitate him, dismember him, throw him in Galveston Bay, and still walk out of that courtroom.
So in a typical case, they all would have had 30 minutes to pick their entire jury and be done. In this case, they traded it for unlimited voir dire, which means that Chip Lewis, because he was the one that handled voir dire, got up and talked to every individual juror for as long as he wanted to. And then they decided what they wanted to do with each juror. Whole different ballgame. So strategically, what he did playing that card was brilliant. And I've never seen it done before that way, ever.
The defense team definitely took advantage of the individual jury questioning and spent a lot of time with jurors. Chip Lewis, in particular, did a lot of the jury questioning, and he was getting to be friends with those jurors before they ever walked into that jury box. I'm watching jury selection. They bring the panel of 300 jurors in, and he proceeds to, by the next day, have memorized every single one of their names and connected it to their face.
I was very surprised that he had taken the time to memorize everybody's name.
We ask a lot of questions about loved ones, friends, somebody close to you that has dealt with mental issues and struggles. Plant the seed in the jury's mind. They're starting to think already before they're even chosen. There's something about mental issues in this case.
The defense was very focused with the jury questioning. Have you ever been in a situation where something happens, you didn't mean for it to happen, and you kind of lose your mind?
We're looking for jurors who have been inoculated to the fact that you're going to see some awful, awful. What I'm going to ask you to do is compartmentalize that awful. And the way you do that is you follow the universal law. It is the law of nature. Nothing that happens after the fact can change how Morris Black died.
In a moment, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to read the court's charge to you, which is the court's instructions on the law and the legal definitions that you need to decide this case.
Jury instruction did not support the defense narrative about they couldn't consider anything after the killing.
We're ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
It took nearly 2 months for both sides to pick this jury. The trial of Robert Durst was then set to begin on September the 22nd, 2003, which was almost 2 years after the murder occurred.
Trial is supposed to start, and all of a sudden, there are these jailhouse tapes.
That's going to make it much more likely that they're going to want to indict me for Cassie.
Taped jail conversations have the potential to completely change the course of a trial.
Okay, you're going to be all right, I promise.
Okay.
Days before we were to begin the trial, 36 hours worth of recorded phone jail conversations with Robert Durst arrived.
Durst had previously been in custody in Pennsylvania, and the Pennsylvania jail had hours of recordings of Durst speaking to Mrs. Durst.
We learned that Robert Durst married real estate power player Deborah Lee Sheraton in December of 2000. Their marriage began less than 9 months before Durst killed Morris Black.
I'm trying not to plan what kind of look I should have on my face.
I know.
Am I supposed to be smiling, or am I supposed to be grim?
If you're thinking of expression, I would just have, like, as close to no expression as you
Yeah, that's what I think.
As you hear Robert Durst talking to his wife, you hear how cunning he is, how smart he is. So you get the real essence and character of the man in these tapes in a way that poor little pitiful frail Robert Durst sitting in the courtroom looks nothing like.
First he was going to say you're incompetent. Then he was going to say you're insane.
There's a conversation between him and his wife where she did not want him to use one of his attorneys because she was afraid that he wanted to use the insanity defense. And what good lawyer wouldn't consider it in this case? The problem was the family trust had a provision that if he was ever found insane or incompetent in a court of law, he would be eliminated from the trust.
That would mean, okay, that your decisions, like giving me a power of attorney, was you were incompetent at the time, so that it's not good. And wait, let me finish, no interrupts. What he doesn't want is me to get any of the trust money later on. So they would take all your money and they would become the guardians of it. It's too risky.
The $750 million that he standed to inherit would not go to him.
These calls were mostly about conversations having to do with the money, so you would think that a lot of that is not even going to be relevant. And that was the ruling that Judge Chris made, that however cold-blooded he seems discussing money has nothing to do with what happened in the murder of Morris Black. So she didn't let hardly any of the jail call information into evidence.
The defendant, Robert Durst, stands charged by indictment with the offense of murder. The defendant has pleaded not guilty.
The Texas trial of the century is ready to begin.
He murdered Morris Black in cold blood and tried to get away with it.
As the prosecutors are presenting their case, it looks pretty bad for Durst. The prosecutors had a mound of evidence that seemed insurmountable.
Motive is not a required element in any murder case. We're all taught that, we all get that, but we also know that if you can't put a motive out there that makes sense to a jury, you're probably not going to win your case.
The prosecution laid out this was a premeditated murder to kill Morris Black, to assume his identity.
The prosecutors laid out evidence that Robert Durst was no dummy. He didn't just panic. He executed Morris Black, and then he proceeded to chop up his body and try to get rid of it.
I mean, people within our office, lawyers on the case, thought there's no way you can win this case.
When the defense got up there, they talked about his life as a young boy and some of the hardships.
He had a tough father by all accounts.
We establish he witnessed his mother commit suicide when he was 11 years old and was raised essentially by a caretaker.
The defense wanted to portray him as having some mental illness or a little bit of insanity without using it as an actual defense.
We let elements of Asperger's, on the spectrum, all of the quirks that are Bob Durst start early and often. We didn't need the jury to like him. We needed him to understand he's a strange bird.
Because of his Asperger's, because of his upbringing, he was very prone to being bullied.
Robert Durst appeared to me to be very small. He looked like maybe he was about 5'5" to 5'7" at the most. But he's a very unintimidating person.
The defense dressed him in overly big clothes to make him look smaller.
DeGuerin raised his chair all the way up to make Dick look that much larger than Bob.
My bailiff would go during the breaks and lower his seat, so the seat went up and down all day.
We were painting a picture of Bob that we wanted the jury to see. We presented a stark contrast between the quirky, eccentric, little, frail Bob Durst and the aggressive, threatening Morris Black.
Morris Black would sometimes get loud, or he could be mean or belligerent.
The defense said they were friends. For whatever reason, their friendship unraveled, and Morris Black targeted Durst and got killed in the process.
Once a jury starts to think, this son of a bitch, nobody's going to miss him, the world's better off without him, it makes Bob Durst a whole lot more likable.
No one deserves to be murdered, obviously, but there are different degrees of victims, too. Let's keep it real. And it's a lot easier to prosecute a case when your victim is nice and sweet and innocent than when they're not.
We had a body, and we had a lot of other circumstantial evidence. So it's good evidence. But what we didn't have, the smoking gun is not there, so to speak. In this case, it'd be the smoking head. Now, how do you prove it without the head? How do you prove that it was accidental? Intentional? How do you prove it? I don't know.
Periodically, when we were all together, Ramsey would inevitably, with perfect comedic timing, say, "They didn't find a head yet, did they?" It was always out there in orbit. We better hope they don't find the head, because if that bullet hole's back here and not right here, we got a problem.
All defendants are innocent until proven guilty. The burden of proof rests on the prosecution to prove the case. The state calls one of their main witnesses, their lead detective, Cody Gonzalez, to walk through every piece of evidence that connects to Robert Durst. Once the prosecution finishes with their direct of Cody Gonzalez, the defense begins their cross-examination.
I knew when he was asked, "What can you point to that shows this is not self-defense?" You could hear a pin drop. And he said, "Nothing."
Once the prosecution rests, the defense's first witness was Robert Durst. Putting a defendant on the stand in a murder case when you're as odd as Robert Durst is, that's a pretty risky move.
There was never a doubt that Bob had to testify.
There's no rule that says you have to put the defendant on the stand and it has to come out of his mouth to say, "I acted in self-defense." But a lot of old school defense lawyers do believe that if you're going to walk a defendant and get them found not guilty, if it's self-defense, they have to get up there and claim self-defense.
Durst is answering questions from his defense team about what it was like to be disguised as a woman while he was living in Galveston. And he proceeded to tell these stories about his wig falling off, his wig catching fire one time. It was incredibly bizarre and funny, and jurors were laughing.
if I were the prosecutor and I saw the jury laughing along with my defendant, I would be pretty alarmed because they're liking this guy. I think the only way you can counter that is to just keep hammering home. We're talking about a man who got a bow saw and tried to cut up a human body to conceal the fact that he committed murder. Don't let them take the monster and make you think he's likable. Come on.
The defense did talk about how Robert Durst and Morris Black were friends, and they lived across the hall from each other. One time he'd even given him a key to the apartment. But then Robert Durst and Morris Black had gotten into an argument, and Durst had taken his key back from Morris Black, and he did not want Morris Black to come back into his apartment anymore. Robert Durst testifies at the time of the murders that when he came back into the apartment, Morris Black was there in the apartment. Robert Durst wanted Morris to leave, but Morris Black didn't want to leave and knew where Robert Durst kept the gun. So Morris Black went to go get the gun, and that the gun accidentally went off in this fight over the gun.
The judge did allow Robert Durst to step down off the witness stand and demonstrate with his attorney to the jurors how exactly the struggle happened and how the gun went off.
Their whole presentation was choreographed down to every step.
What you can see happen in a courtroom with your own eyes because it's acted out in front of you is always going to be more impactful than just sitting on a witness stand talking about it. That is his version of events that he has all the right in the world to describe and show the jury. If they chose to believe it, that's up to the jury.
Watching this reenactment, it was plausible to me this could have happened.
They were riveted, standing up, leaning over when Durst did the demonstration, the struggle over the gun. The way the struggle happened, the way he fell, and where Morris Black was shot right above the nose through the eyes could not be contradicted by the head.
The head was never found.
When the prosecution cross-examined the witness, they were looking to tear Robert Durst's testimony apart.
Kurt and I split up the cross-examination, and I focused on the dismemberment. You don't get people up after an accident or self-defense. And if you look at the cuts, this is not something that was done haphazardly or in a crisis. This is something that was done with the skill of a surgeon.
This case is not about what happened to Morris Black's body after he was dead. This case is not about what Bob Durst did after Morris Black died. The sole issue for you ladies and gentlemen to decide is how.
And the crux of this case is whether the state has proved to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Bob Durst knowingly, intentionally, voluntarily killed Morris Black. There's no motive and nothing to gain. What makes sense about anything that this man did on September 28th, September 29th, September 30th, and October 1st when he fled? None of it makes sense.
The defendant has demonstrated the willingness to commit horrid, indescribable acts of butchery. That man, Robert Durst, is guilty of murder. Thank you.
I think that if you would have asked anybody in the courthouse, we would have all told you, well, he's going to be found guilty. But my brother at the time was a court reporter in a different courtroom, and he went and watched a lot of the trial, and he told me how it was going pretty much every day. And I had even kind of been warned it wasn't going great for the prosecution.
Your job as a juror is to look and consider all the evidence.
The prosecution's message in their closing arguments were methodical and based on evidence. They weren't as compelling.
The jury must be convinced that Mr. Durst voluntarily and intentionally killed Morris Black. The fact of running away alone cannot supply that evidence.
A huge part of courtroom winning or losing is theater, and it's drama, and it's connecting with a jury. And I think that the defense attorneys just had a better connection.
We went into the jury room for deliberations. A vote was taken, some for guilty, some for not guilty, and some undecided.
A lot of us are thinking this may be a hung jury.
As the jury enters the courtroom, viewers from all over America are tuning in to learn the fate of Robert Durst.
With the jury, find the defendant, Robert Durst, not guilty.
The courtroom went berserk. Reporters were running out of the courtroom to do live shots. People were crying.
Everybody in the country, especially everybody in law enforcement or a prosecutorial background, thought this was the greatest layup of all time. There's no way he's not going to be convicted. But criminal justice for the Dursts of the world is far different than the average citizen. Justice isn't black or white, it's green. And he had the green.
I don't want to believe that just because a defendant has a lot of money, he can subvert the system and walk away with a not guilty verdict and not get justice. A disaster happened, and it makes me sick. I mean, Joel and Kurt took their loss quietly, a lot better than I would have.
When we heard the verdict, you need to respect the jury and not react when you hear the verdict. It's a tough job. We presented the case to the best of our ability.
It was a pretty awful moment because I have to act like I don't have an opinion about it. But in my head, I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy's really dangerous. And he's about to be loosened on the public.
I don't think the jurors had any idea the lens they were going to be under the second they said not guilty.
I did not want to convict this man on what I thought. I wanted to make a decision on what I knew, on the evidence that was presented to me.
Based on the evidence that was presented to us, there was reasonable doubt. I feel that the prosecution did not prove how Morris Black died. We all, as jurors, agreed that the not guilty is saying not proven.
After Robert Durst was found not guilty, the other charges were kind of just left over. Nobody had the zeal to worry about those, and they all pretty quickly just came to an agreement that he would serve a little bit of time and plead to those cases, and it would all be over with in Texas.
After the jury verdict, there were accusations of, were any of the jurors paid off? Did Durst get to them?
I believe in this case, justice was bought. I believe in this case, with Durst's money, justice was bought.
Not guilty.
What was real surprising to me was soon after the case was over, the head juror on the trial started visiting Robert Durst in jail with his family, becoming friends with him after trial. What can I tell you?
One of the jurors subsequent to that case worked for Bob Durst himself. And then Bob donated $1 million to Galveston County to build a law library.
I think that the jurors in this case, if you ask them today, would change their verdict.
I'm getting kind of emotional here because, I mean, now you find out all this stuff afterwards, and I just felt like we were all played.
Robert Durst was found not guilty for what happened with Morris Black, but his real day of reckoning came in a courtroom in L.A. County for the Susan Berman case with a prosecutor named John Lewin. John Lewin was able to build a strong circumstantial evidence case because he took the incriminating evidence from Robert Durst's friends and connected that to the incriminating evidence from Robert Durst himself to link Robert Durst to the murder of Susan Berman. John Lewin was granted access to all of Kurt and Joel's files and spent a whole lot of time talking to them, as well as the people involved with the Kathy Durst case. John Lewin was able to take a bird's eye view of what was going on all across the country, from New York to Texas to LA, and make it all understandable and put it all together and make it all admissible in that one trial in LA County. And nobody else ever did that.
I got the first call when Bob Durst was arrested in New Orleans on the California warrant. He said, I need you to get here. They've arrested me for murder.
Based on Robert Durst's history, there was no telling what would happen with the Susan Berman trial in LA. I mean, lightning struck once. Maybe it would strike again.
Dick DeGuerin was Durst's defense lawyer. Chip Lewis was his defense lawyer. John Lewin gave his opening statement, and then they shut down the courtroom for COVID. And it was over a year later that they continued the trial. The beautiful thing that happened, John Lewin figured out a way to make the motive of why he killed Susan Berman have to necessarily include what happened in Galveston and what happened in Westchester County.
All three of these cases, ladies and gentlemen, are interrelated. Everything starts with Kathy Durst's disappearance and death at the hands of Mr. Durst. And he had to kill Susan Berman because he feared that she was going to talk. And then he had to kill Morris Black because Morris Black knew who he was and was putting pressure on him.
Judge Wyndham was a fine man. I like him a lot. We're friends. But when he overruled my motion to keep out Morris Black, I told him on the bench, we don't need to have the trials. It's over. There was no ability to make Robert Durst a sympathetic figure. A jury to hear that in the face of everything else, they were never going to acquit him.
When they put Robert Durst on the stand, he was sickly, he was older, the pizzazz had gone away, and John Lewin was super prepared and went at him.
It's ridiculous. It's patently absurd. It's a fiction.
Robert Durst is found guilty of the first-degree murder of Susan Berman. More than 20 years after her death, he is sentenced to life without parole.
There was a lot of satisfaction in watching the outcome of the Los Angeles trial, because it did feel like he was being accountable not just for Susan Berman's murder, but for Morris Black and for Kathy Durst's murder.
Because of what happened in Galveston County, John Lewin was able to use all that to help put his case together. So at the end of the day, there was a point to all of it. It didn't happen as soon or as nicely or as easily as maybe we would have wanted, but in the end, they got justice.
When I looked, there was ladies pushing strollers, several people walking, running, and I remember thinking, I'm going to hurry up and go to the bathroom real quick.
I walked out of my apartment. I was just walking to my car, and I heard something, and by the time I turned my head, he was already right there behind me.
He grabbed me and started pounding my face, and I remember thinking, if I didn't look at him, then he wouldn't kill me. That was all my kids had.
He put a knife to my throat. It didn't register that I was fixing to get raped. It was, I'm fixing to die.
One of the great things about this project is being able to work with these victims and these local police officers to bring some closure to some of these unsolved cases. Studies tell us that over 200,000 sexual assaults happen in America in a year, and only 2% of those lead to convictions.
And I think in a sexual assault, one of the most important things for a victim to do is something that they have to do immediately, which is go and get the sexual assault exam.
If we have any hope of recovering DNA evidence, it's going to be in those hours that follow that they go to the hospital.
Physical evidence collected from a victim after a sexual assault is called a rape kit. And while these kits may contain DNA belonging to the attacker, there are many reasons these kits go untested.
A lot of these really smaller agencies can't get their kits tested. Either there's such a backlog at their state crime lab, or they just lack the funds.
Right, the big cities were able to get some grants and money from the federal government to help clear up their backlogs, but a lot of the smaller cities just weren't able to access any of those funds. So we're able to come in and do some testing and really give these officers some of the answers they need to get started.
So we're really going to focus this week on two cases. One happened in 1991, one happened in 1999. I think what's so shocking about these cases is these are women doing average everyday things. Marilyn, the 1999 case, was jogging after work in the middle of the morning, and she was attacked when she stopped for a restroom break. And then we're also going to work on a case where Melissa was walking to her car in her parking lot of her apartment complex. She was threatened at knife point and taken to an abandoned apartment.
It could have happened to anyone, anywhere, in any place in America.
It's just terrifying. You think you're safe jogging through a park or walking through your own parking lot, and you're not.
Something that's always driven me in this line of work is helping the victim. Lieutenant.
How are you doing? Kevin Kirkham.
Nice to meet you, Kevin Casey Garrett.
Deputy O'Neill. Nice to meet you.
How long have you been with Lake Charles?
27 and a half years.
Oh my gosh.
I've been working in sex crimes about 7 years.
Great.
I did work robbery and homicide, and all of it is real tragic. But to imagine being assaulted and having to live with that, you know, that gives me a rewarding feeling when I can help a living victim.
Hey, Jesse. How are you?
Good. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Working on more than one case at a time can be a little difficult. The hardest thing is to keep everybody in line with each particular case.
Hey there.
Hey, good morning.
Detective Atkinson, how long have you been with the police department?
Almost 17 years now.
Okay.
I do domestic abuse, anything, sexual assault.
So you did some work on Marilyn's case?
Yes, I did.
Do you mind if we get some stuff up on the board
Sure.
and pick your brain some more? Okay. So this is Marilyn. Offense date.
October 5th, 99. She was out at the Civic Center jogging that morning in broad daylight.
Stopped for a restroom break.
Correct.
She didn't indicate he had any type of weapon. It was just
No,
force.
just force.
Okay. All right. So, is that a place where people jog?
Yes,
is there
we
a
have
trail?
a boardwalk. And
Okay, so that wasn't unusual then.
that wasn't
Okay.
unusual.
She was a nurse at the hospital
Oh.
at Memorial.
That
She
makes
had gotten off of her shift and then went down to the Civic Center to run.
She ends up just driving herself back to the same hospital that she worked at.
Correct.
A lot of times in stranger rapes, where the victim does not know the attacker, the little details in the victim's account can be invaluable leads for the investigator.
Marilyn, this is Lieutenant Kirkham.
And as hard as this is, it's really important when Marilyn sits down with Lieutenant Kirkham and Detective Atkinson that she give them as much detail as possible.
Marilyn, do you remember the day?
I was working nights at Lake Charles Memorial Hospital.
Okay.
A friend of mine, we had decided we'd start running together. And this particular day, we were just slammed. She said, "I'm tired. I'm going home." And I said, "Well, you know, I think I'm just going to go ahead and do a short run." When I drove up, there was ladies pushing strollers. There was small kids walking. They were planting trees at the Civic Center. All the way along, there was people there. It felt safe to me, so I got out of my car, locked my car, and then I just started trotting like along the seawall. So when I got near the bathroom, I said, "Oh my gosh, you know, all that coffee I had last night, let me run in there real quick." And I just remember going in there, and I went to the sink. And it was just like in a split second, this guy came charging in. I think he put this hand over my mouth, and I bit him. And when I bit this hand, he took the other one, and I felt my nose pop. He got on top of me, and just both fists just pounded, pounded, pounded. So, that's all. And actually, I felt bad for biting the guy because I'm not a violent person. And I kept thinking if I didn't look at him, that he wouldn't kill me because I had 4 babies at home. And then the next thing I knew, he grabbed me some kind of way and he threw me like really hard. I landed between the toilet and the wall. he grabbed my waist and he pulled my leggings down. And I remember him saying, "You're gonna like this." That's the first time he spoke. And I felt him against me, like warm, like skin to skin. I remember thinking, okay, you're gonna do this to me, then I'm gonna get a good look at you. And I remember turning my face and looking straight at him, and when I did, I was bleeding and I couldn't swallow. And I just remember just like I could not breathe. And he said, "Oh God, I can't do this. You need to go to the hospital. Wait right here, I'll get my truck." Like he was gonna bring me to the hospital or something.
Crazy.
I got up immediately and ran out the door, and I drove to Lake Charles Memorial. People kept saying, "What happened?" I said, I was just attacked. At no point did I ever say it was attempted rape, because I felt ashamed. And there was a police officer that came in, and I remember he made everybody leave the room, and he said, "First thing I'm going to tell you is this is not your fault. You didn't do it. You didn't cause it." He said, "I want you to tell me what really happened." And so I did. And I just remember crying and crying, and I said, "Well, he did get my pants down, but he didn't rape me. He stopped." And I said, "That's what really happened." He had really sky blue, like the color of your shirt, blue eyes. This guy had on a light-colored shirt, and he had like a reddish colored tags above on both sides. Probably one was a company and one was a name, is my guess.
She's an incredible lady.
Oh, good memory.
Incredible memory, very articulate.
The report reads is you don't know if they made penetration or not.
I'm telling you, I feel like I would know that because I had not been sexually active in years.
We're going to treat it like a sexual assault. And until the lab tells us something differently,
Right.
then that's what we're going to do.
And I want to know.
And you want to know.
I do. I absolutely want to know.
While the team still searches for leads in Marilyn's case, Lieutenant Kirkham sits down with Melissa, who was attacked more than 20 years ago, and her rapist has never been found.
Somebody put a knife to my throat. I never saw his face.
I pray with every ounce of my being that no one I know ever has to experience what I did. Hi,
Nice to meet
Stacy.
you.
It's nice to meet
Oh,
you too.
We're so excited to be able to work on your case.
It was really hard for me to decide to do it, but I just feel like if it just helps one person, it's worth it.
One of the things that we're doing is having the DNA tested.
We really wanted to make sure that we tested everything that could possibly have his DNA on it.
We want to always be realistic. It's a long shot in your particular case
Yeah.
if there's no semen. I was incredibly affected by your comment in your interview about how being a mother, you were like, I can't die here.
Right,
You know
exactly.
what I mean?
I think the absolute hardest moment for me was telling my kids, because I was a single mom with small kids. You know, I was all they had.
What was life like for you after the attack?
I think, you know, for kids to see their mom go through that, it was hard.
Sure, it's
there were
unsettling.
lots of things that we had to work through together, but we did it, and it was okay, and I think we're better because of it. So,
did you ever continue to run after that?
You know, it's funny, but I quit. Decided, you know what, I never was a runner, and I started this, and I probably shouldn't be. But then I went back. It was my 10-year anniversary of, you know, it had been 10 years. And I actually ran right past the bathroom. That was the finish line right there.
Isn't that something?
It
Yeah.
was very much like, see, I did it anyway.
After hearing such a heart-wrenching account of what happened to Marilyn, we're ready to get started on this investigation. We have an unknown suspect, white male, 5'7", medium build.
Late 20s to early 30s.
Okay. Brown hair.
She said blue eyes, didn't she?
That's what sticks out the most to her. There's something about the eyes.
Okay.
Right.
Great.
And I think that at one point they had a composite done, and I'm not sure where those things are.
Lake Charles Police Department lost many documents when Hurricane Rita hit the city very hard in 2005. If we can locate that composite sketch that Marilyn did of her attacker, it would really be a great help if we can find it. One of the most significant descriptors, of course, is that uniform shirt. All right, well, we are waiting on DNA results, right? They've got the fingernail scrapings and the oral swab.
Yeah, we sent everything.
Okay. And we believe that there was some type of sexual contact, but unknown penetration.
Because DNA evidence is really a long shot in Marilyn's case, we're going to have to use Marilyn's description of the attacker and what he was wearing to help find this guy and bring him to justice.
You know, the nurse who gave the sexual assault kit to the officers was named Tammy Bailey, so I'm wondering if she was the SANE nurse at the time, or maybe the...
She is actually our head SANE nurse now. She's the one that started the SANE program here.
A sexual assault nurse examiner, or a SANE, is specially trained to handle the care of a rape victim.
Tammy.
Hi.
How are you?
At the time of Marilyn's attack, the hospital in Lake Charles didn't have a SANE program yet.
After reviewing the police officer's notes, do you remember Marilyn?
Yes. So Tammy, an emergency room nurse, did the rape kit in Marilyn's case.
After a case like this, I've thought to myself, you know, we need to raise the standard of care here. And within a year, I was in training and doing clinicals to make sure that this program evolved.
You know, one of the really great things that you did in the case, in Marilyn's case, was take fingernail scrapings from her. You also did swabbings of her hands. I don't know if that's something you guys always did back in '99 or not.
Now we do fingernail swabs because sometimes with the scraping, you would get some of the patient's own cells. And
Tammy was incredibly thorough in her examination of Marilyn. And if we do get DNA evidence in this case, it's going to be because of her efforts.
You have your driver's license on you?
We all believe that Marilyn's attack was a stranger rape, but there's a chance that it could have been somebody that had interacted with her or had been following her prior to the attack. So we're going to talk to some of her friends from that time and see if anybody remembers anyone matching that description.
White male, 5'7", 150 to 180 pounds, light brown hair, blue eyes.
No.
The man had a little beard or mustache, trimmed up real nicely.
No, honestly, not that I can recall.
We're really hoping to find the composite that Marilyn did, which we think was lost during the hurricane.
You'll have another stack.
So we're going through other composite sketches to see if we can determine who the sketch artist was.
Okay, I found a sketch with somebody's name on it from '99.
Debbie Brasso, Lafayette S.O., forensic artist. Hello. Mr. Brasso, I don't know if you remember me, but I think you did a couple of composites for me, a sexual assault case from 1999.
Okay, what's the victim's name?
Marilyn.
I'll have to get in my box and go through it. I'll check all my drawings, and in fact, the other day I looked at it and I thought, I can probably start getting rid of those, and then I thought, nah, better not.
Thank you.
I'll give you all a call back. Okay, bye-bye.
Almost getting ready to get rid of it.
Yeah. Glad she didn't. While investigators continue working on Marilyn's case, we're going to focus on Melissa, who was raped in a vacant apartment. Very pretty girl. What was the date of the offense again?
10/20/91. She was 21 years old at the time of the incident.
Melissa was attacked 20 years ago, but her rapist has never been found.
What we're going to do is we're just going to start by just let you go through it, tell me what happened.
I remember going out that night, so it was Wendy's birthday that we went out for.
Okay.
It was Derek, Lisa, Wendy, and Reggie, and then there was another friend, Stacy, but he wasn't always around. He was just every once in a while. I left early to come home because I was going to see somebody that worked at Memorial Hospital. He worked the night shift.
So when you get to the apartment, how long are you there before you leave again?
In my mind, it's probably 2 or 3 when I'm leaving. I walked out of my apartment, you know, I was just walking to my car, and I heard something to my right. Somebody came up from behind me and put a knife to my throat.
I didn't have time to run. It didn't register that I was fixing to get raped. It was, I'm fixing to die. We went into what looked like a back porch, back patio. I do remember seeing that. And the only reason why I knew that it was a black man was because my eyes were not covered at this time, and he tried to open the sliding glass door. And I saw his hand. The next thing I remember is being down on my knees, and then it was all fours.
Do you recall how you got down on your knees? Whether he just told you and you got down, or if
I think
he
he
forced you?
probably told me. I don't remember him. I'm sorry, I just don't.
That's okay. While you were on all fours, is that when he made penetration?
Mm-hmm. Afterwards, he told me to count to 10 before I could come out of the patio, and he took off. He told me if I called the police, he would come back and kill me. I never saw his face. He was behind me the entire time. I went back into the apartment and woke my roommate, Wendy, up. I was hysterical. She was, asking me questions, and I just immediately ran to the bathroom to wash. I just wanted to take a shower. And she was on with 911, and they said, don't take a shower. I've kept it quiet, kept it to myself, a lot of it. He took something from me that I didn't say he could have. He's gone on with his life. And I'm stuck with this haunting me.
You got anything that you think that you can tell us that you didn't?
I can't remember. I just wish I could see it.
Melissa's really hard on herself for not being able to remember more. I'm Casey Garrett.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, too.
I'm Alicia O'Neill.
Alicia and I want to reassure her that she did a great job, and we feel that she remembered a lot.
It's common for victims to come back in a cold case like this and have a hard time remembering details.
Now she's agreed to take us back to the apartment complex where she and her roommate live. I'm in here. You guys go with LT and walk us through what happened.
You did great in the interview. It's really hard to talk about something that you've tried to not think about for many years. Did you ever go to any counseling or anything like that after this?
I did some counseling. I went to a couple of rape crisis meetings here in Lake Charles. I felt like I didn't belong there because a lot of the women were violently raped, or they knew who it was, and I didn't have a clue. I just felt like I didn't belong, and so I didn't go anymore.
I mean, though, you were the victim of a very violent sexual assault. I mean, somebody put a knife to your throat. Counseling can be an invaluable part of the healing process for any rape survivor. And just let us know if this gets too hard, okay? Even though Melissa didn't feel like it was for her in the past, I hope that she does feel comfortable talking to someone now if she feels like she needs it.
It was right in this area. Oh, my gosh.
It's obviously pretty hard for Melissa to come back to this crime scene. I really admire her courage, and I hope she understands how strong and brave she's being.
Did he pull you back?
This way.
This
yeah,
way?
I remember going this way.
Okay.
Did it feel like a long distance or a short distance?
It did. It felt like a long distance.
So this might have been all woods, because this comes to the back of the apartment complex here.
I think it was that patio. There was light on inside. That's how I knew that it was empty.
So you would have just basically exited that last patio and then run all the way back around this direction through where the laundromat was and back to your apartment?
Right.
Okay. It really seems to me like Melissa's attacker might have been familiar with this apartment complex because he knew to take her back around there to that vacant apartment.
Wendy is my best friend, and she's remained my best friend. I met Wendy when I think I was 18.
Hi, Lieutenant Kirker.
Wendy was my rock through it all.
I was inside the apartment, and I remember her coming inside the apartment, hysterically crying, makeup running. She was devastated. She was violated. She was,
Okay, what did she tell you?
She said he raped me.
And your first question would have been, who?
Yeah.
Can you recall, did she speculate it might have been somebody she knew or anything?
Yeah.
Do you remember who she said it?
Stacy.
Some guy named Stacy?
Yeah.
Wow.
She did?
She said yeah.
Although Wendy is certain that Melissa named Stacy as a suspect the night of the incident, there's no indication from past reports that Melissa had suggested a suspect at all.
Well, he hung out sort of, kind of with us, with the kind of the group that we hung out with. He was like a friend of theirs.
Try to hit on y'all or anything like that?
Oh, everybody hit on me. She was cute. I mean, he tried to go out with her,
Mm-hmm.
We've got to verify all this Stacy stuff with Melissa. Okay. We need to ask Melissa about this acquaintance named Stacy. If she thinks he could have been involved, then he'll become a suspect.
Would you be surprised to hear that Wendy told us that the first thing that you told her was you were attacked and he raped me? And her question was who? And you said Stacy. You don't recall that?
Hey, the only thing I can remember that made me think of Stacy was because he was short and stocky. He was shorter than I, or might have been right at the same height as me, and he was stocky.
In the police report, she does state that she thought her attacker was 5'3". That's very short and very specific. We need to know more about Stacy's physical description.
You thought it was Stacy only because of his size and stature.
Well, not only because, but every time we would go out, he was always hitting on me, trying to hook up, and I would not do it. Wasn't interested at all. That night at the club, he tried to hook up, and I said no. He did get angry that night.
That was pretty interesting when he got angry.
Yeah, very.
Although Melissa is in no way certain, her thoughts about Stacy right after the attack, plus the fact that we now know that he's only listed as 5'6" on his driver's license, which makes him very similar to the height that she's always suggested, means we really can't ignore him as a suspect, and we need to get a buckle swab from Stacy.
Hey, how you doing?
Thank you.
I'm Detective Atkinson. This is Lieutenant Kirk.
Does Stacy live here?
Yeah, he's my husband.
We're working on a case. His name came up, and we just need to talk with him.
What's it about?
The case? I can't tell you. It's a cold case.
She's in Ohio.
In Ohio? You know how to get in touch with him? Or?
I do. Well, I'm having to call you. That would probably be better.
Oh, that's fine.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Hello. How you doing, Stacy? Hello. How you doing, Stacy?
Stacy was obviously very interested in why Lieutenant Kirkham was calling him, because he called us just moments after we talked to his wife.
We're working a cold case, sexual assault, back from 1991. It's concerning a friend of yours, a girl by the name of Melissa. You know who I'm talking about?
No, I don't know the name right now.
Anyway, we don't expect anybody to be in trouble, but as part of the investigation, we like to do some elimination tests. When you come back into town, do you think I might be able to get an elimination sample from you so we can move on to the next person?
What is it? What type of case is it? Assault charge?
Yes, sir. It's an assault charge.
Okay.
All right?
Okay, no problem.
All right, I appreciate you calling so quick.
Okay, man.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Cool. So he said he would do it, huh?
Yeah.
I hope Stacy does follow through and come in and give a sample of his DNA. But you just never know. I've seen a lot of people say that they're going to rush right down and do it and just never show up.
So while we're waiting for Stacy to come in and talk to investigators on Melissa's case, we're going to focus our attention on Marilyn's case, where she gave a very specific description of a uniform shirt that the attacker was wearing. We're going to visit some companies in the area to see if maybe they manufactured or rented out a uniform that matches Marilyn's description.
They're working a cold case here on control where someone would have worn maybe the old light blue white. There's a lot of folks that could have had that. Bluish uniform? I can't remember.
Did the city ever contract with anybody that... Because of the fact that it was at the Civic...
Uniforms, but it doesn't, not that.
But there's nothing like that. That's what these guys said.
A light green or a light blue, so it had the red patches on it. You remember about around that time?
Nobody that worked in the building. The uniform is not familiar at all.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating to have like a description of clothing and not be able to place it.
The search for the possible uniform was really a dead end. The good news is there may be some progress in the search for the composite sketch in Marilyn's case.
Miss Brasso has contacted me back and actually emailed me the sketch so we can put it up on the board and kind of go over it.
Great. White male, late 20s, 5'5" to 5'7", 150, light brown hair, blue eyes. This sketch could really be important in Marilyn's case because if we run out of leads, Lieutenant Kirkham can use the sketch to ask for the public's help.
I know we're really hoping to hear from the lab today, and I'm hoping that they're able to give us some information about those fingernail scrapings in Marilyn's case.
To be realistic, without any genetic material under her fingernail scrapings, I'm not sure where we do go from here.
I think at that point we're at a place where we're asking the public for help. I think we're showing the composite to the public, talking about the details of the offense and the specific traits of this offender, and asking them to help us identify this guy. Although we're hopeful we'll get conclusive results in Marilyn's case from a rape kit, based on her description of the attack, it's unlikely that we're going to get the traditional kind of DNA results we would expect. So we'll most likely have to rely on the public's help if we want to solve this case.
Yes, sir. Hey, Mr. Miles, we was hoping you might have something for us today.
Okay, so our fingernail scrapings, left-hand fingernail scrapings, it's a low-level profile. It looks to be degraded. There's not a great amount of information from it. Looks a lot like her profile, but it's really too low for us to say much about it. The one profile that we obtained that has probative value is from a swab, what is labeled a left-hand swab. It was from the frozen packet that was submitted along with the sexual assault kit.
Okay.
We obtained pretty much a single-source male profile from that swab.
Wow. That is unbelievable news, Miles.
Wow.
I can't tell you how thrilled we are.
It was a surprise to us as well. It's a very good profile.
Thank you, Miles.
Thank you.
We appreciate the work.
Thanks.
I did not expect. I did not expect.
This is huge news in Marilyn's case. I mean, it's something we hoped for, but certainly didn't expect. This means we can load the profile taken from the swab on Marilyn's hand into the National CODIS database and hope for a hit on an offender. That's your bad guy right there. I think you're coming for him. You know everything about him except for his name.
The most important thing is to know that this isn't your fault. You have to know that it's not your fault and you didn't ask for it. You didn't do anything.
Hey, Mr. Miles Robichaud, this is Lieutenant Kirkham. How you doing?
We have a call with the lab this morning about the DNA in Melissa's case, and we're hoping for some good news.
All right, can I put you on speakerphone?
Police got a buccal swab from Melissa's former friend Stacy and sent that on to the crime lab for comparison.
So, in Melissa's case, we obtained a foreign male component to a vaginal swab that we processed. And we've excluded Stacy from the profile that we obtained from the vaginal swab. So he is excluded. Also, we have searched that male component in both the state database and the national database, and we have not gotten the CODIS match to that profile.
Melissa's attack happened in 1991, which is before CODIS even existed. It's possible that Melissa's attacker is sitting in a prison somewhere and that the state's laws just haven't resulted in his profile being loaded into CODIS yet.
However, the profile has been entered into the database.
So it'll remain there, and if and when a potential offender's DNA is added, then there would be a hit.
That's correct.
Great. Having a full male DNA profile loaded into CODIS that can be constantly compared to any new offender that's added to that database is a huge step forward in Melissa's case.
Good to see you both.
How are you?
Look at your haircut.
But I still know that this isn't the news she was hoping for, and it's going to be difficult to hear.
Well, we had some information we wanted to give you. They were able to get the swab from Stacy, and they did send it off to the lab, and he was excluded as the contributor. And we do have the male profile. Right now, there's not currently an offender in the database that matches that profile. That doesn't mean that we're not going to get that we're never going to get an answer. I mean, that's still possible.
Right.
I wish we had a different answer for you. But you needed an answer one way or the other about him.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I mean, I really, truly am in my heart happy that it wasn't him, because I didn't want, you know, I mean, it would just tear his family up, and I didn't want that. So I am glad about that. But I'm very sad for me, because I wanted to know who it was.
Yeah.
You know, it excuse my language, but it pisses me off
Sure.
that I have gone all this time not knowing who it is, and this person is going on with his life, and, you know, I don't know, it just pisses me off.
I don't blame you. But I really mean this when I say there's hope.
It stays in the system, and anytime an offender is added in, it'll be run against that. You're just waiting for this guy to mess up and get added into that database. No, we want to go after the real bad guy. And that's what Kirkham will do. He never gives up. That guy.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's a good man.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate all y'all have done. I want to help other women. I have hope that somebody might have a similar case to mine. Hopefully, I have encouraged them to come forward.
You're going to be the vision of a strong survivor for somebody out there.
Somebody's been attacked and is sitting in a corner somewhere thinking,
afraid to come forward? A young person like you were?
I think what I would tell any survivor out there is that find the power within you to move forward, and don't let this incident control you.
We're dying to hear what you have to say, Miles. We've got another call this morning with the lab to give us an update on Marilyn's DNA, which has already been loaded into CODIS.
All right, so the Maryland case, that profile has matched to an offender in the national database.
Oh my God. That is shocking.
Yeah, so the individual's name is Austin Mott. This is a Texas offender, by the way. And the qualifying offense that I have is aggravated sexual assault.
So imagine that.
Yep. A qualifying offense is what got the suspect loaded into CODIS in the first place, which means that Maryland's suspected rapist is most likely already serving time for a similar crime. Okay, so Austin Mott is eligible for parole in 2 years, so this will be a good thing to...
Oh, that's good timing. What county was his conviction out of?
Newton County in 2002. It almost borders Lake Charles.
Oh, yeah, it sure does.
What we know is that there is some male component to that vaginal swab. We could see it as part of our process. We just couldn't detect it because there was so much female DNA that it was overpowering the male component. So we used YSTR analysis that basically looks at just the male component in a sample.
The thing about that, Miles, is that she wasn't sure if she was penetrated.
We've got a male YSTR profile that matches, from the left-hand swab and the vaginal swab.
I know that Marilyn was hoping that she wasn't penetrated, but, it does answer that question. This is really hard because even though it is great news in terms of the prosecution, I just know that it's going to be hard for Marilyn personally.
That was such great thinking on y'all's part to go ahead and do that YSTR testing.
Miles, thank you. Your work has just been so phenomenal on these cases. We cannot thank you enough.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Miles. Bye-bye. I cannot believe this.
I just wanted to be able to tell her who did it to her, and now we can.
Oh, man, this is awesome. Yeah, this is so great. This meeting with Marilyn is bittersweet because on the one hand, we have the best possible news to give to Marilyn. We found her attacker. But what is so gut-wrenching for us to tell her is that one of the things that she has believed all of these years and that has comforted her is really not true.
I hope I can keep it together.
Yeah, okay.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
This is
One of
Lauren.
your daughters.
Lauren. Yes, Lauren. Casey, nice to meet you. Thank you for being here with her. We're so thankful that she's got such supportive daughters. How have you been feeling?
Honestly, really anxious. Like I'm ready to find an end to the story. When I was first asked if I'd do this, I was like, oh, it's been 15 years, no big deal. But it has actually brought up a lot of anxiety.
Well, we've got some really amazing news. We got the information from the lab. They have now run it, okay, and we got a hit.
Really?
Yeah. We know who it is. He's been in prison for 13 years because unfortunately he raped another woman in 2002, but he got 30 years. So he's been in a Texas prison since then. His name is Austin Mott. He's actually eligible for parole in 2 years.
Where's he from? What was he doing in Lake Charles?
Well, the second rape happened in Newton County.
Which is just right on the other side of Lake Charles in Texas.
I can't believe this is like real. Like I absolutely cannot believe it.
A couple other things that I want to tell you that's difficult, but important. They were able to develop some male DNA from a vaginal swab. I know you didn't want that to be the truth, for obvious reasons, but it helps in the prosecution.
It's what's going to keep this man in prison, Marilyn. It is. It's going to keep him from doing this to anyone else.
I don't know. I guess that's kind of been my coping mechanism for a whole lot of years. And I'm just shocked.
I think she said it like 10 times. But I know he didn't rape me. She said it like a bunch. So I just...
Yeah, every time I've left, I've called and told her that.
It's a lot to digest.
You told us that when you go places, sometimes you wonder if he's around or if he's there, and this tells you he's not. He's in prison. We know exactly where he is every day.
This Newton County victim, in 2 years, she's probably going to start worrying about whether or not she's going to get a letter from the parole board about his possible release.
Right.
Right? But that ain't ever going to happen now. And that's because you participated in this,
I still have a lot of this to process, but I'm ready to process it and move forward. I want to go back to biking and living and he can't hurt my babies.
That's right.
None of them.
Or anybody else's.
That's right. And because of that, it is so worth doing all of this. I just feel like I can see God's hand all over this. And I'm positive beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is all part of a healing process.
I have a lot of love in my heart for you and your family.
I think the biggest thing is to find somebody and tell your story. Don't hold it in. Because even if it didn't end the way mine did, by telling your story, you can still heal. You can help other people heal, because you never know who's listening and who that will impact.
Absolutely.